Hey everyone, welcome to the Dare to Care podcast, the podcast where we talk about the inner workings of ministry at Inspire Family Fellowship and community stories within and around the church. If you have any comments, stories, or questions about Inspire or our Dare to Care ministries at any point during our podcast today, feel free to send those questions to Amy at inspirefamily.org. We also invite you to join us in person at Inspire any Sunday or Wednesday that you're able, 523 North 21st Street, Bismarck, North Dakota. We have Sunday services at 9:15 and 10:45, and Wednesday nights we start with a meal at 5, classes for all ages at 6, and then a service at 7. My name's Ty Farnsworth. I'm the worship coordinator here at Inspire Family Fellowship, joined today by Pastor Rob Peske, who you guys should know by now.
Hopefully, and if not, I'd love to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. And his wife, the lovely Nicole Peske.
Well, thanks for having me.
I have to double check. You guys are the married
pair,
I
think
right?
We married each other.
We are married. Yep.
How long have you been married?
Is it? Yeah, Nicole, how long have we been married?
It will be 21 years in December.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and most of those years have been pretty good. So
good.
Oh, Rob Peske.
I know.
Well, we're here to talk about...
I'm just a charmer from beginning to end, aren't I?
We're not here to talk about your marriage specifically.
Oh, thank goodness.
But today's
That's a whole
episode is...
podcast.
Today's episode is all about Orphan Sunday in a broad sense. And I wanted to touch on your guys' experience with that. I know Orphan Sunday is an important celebration to you guys for a variety of reasons. Both of you have briefly touched on your role as adoptee parents. And just, I want to hear a little bit about that story going forward. So let's start with what is Orphan Sunday?
Orphan Sunday is just something that a lot of churches recognize. I don't know if it's an official, I don't know, Nicole, do you know the company that sponsors it? But it's usually the first Sunday in November, and it's just a time to pause and remember the needs of orphans in the world, really. Am I right? I'm making this up.
Yeah,
Do you know what
I'm
talking
like a
about?
fact checker.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that was really good. And November is National Adoption Month.
Okay.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of how they landed on the Sunday in November.
Yeah, and it's something, in the church, obviously, we're interested in and we talk about, but it's really just an opportunity to highlight this specific need, because it's a massive need that it's kind of easy to forget about in your day-to-day life because you're living your life and you're busy. And I think that's kind of the whole point of orphans is they're so easy to forget about and neglect. And so, yeah, we told this story, 7 years ago on Orphan Sunday. We kind of took over the serve. It
was back at the Baymont.
Yeah, and that was the day we had Emily baptized here at the church.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And so, I don't know, I just thought maybe this would be a good time to tell parts of that story again. We were just visiting right before this started. It's interesting now because I don't know that we've officially told the story since Emily was old enough to really, contribute to the story.
Sure.
Because she's 13 now and, has her own personality and her own thoughts. And so, as we go through, if there's something we don't answer, it might be because, we realize that's her story to tell. But it is a fascinating story and a life-changing story.
Sure.
So maybe Nicole, you want to start because let's be honest, this was all your idea.
That's what he always says. I don't know if there's truth to that.
Let's take it way back.
Way back.
Yeah. Well, we had 2 biological children. We were done. That was all we were going to have. And then, I don't know, somehow I was following some Christian bloggers that were big into adoption advocacy. They were in the process of adopting. We had some friends at church that were also in the process of adopting. And I think I just started looking into and researching sort of what kids across the world, what kind of conditions they were living in orphanages, how they were treated. And I think sometimes, thank goodness, when you see something, you just can't unsee it. And so it just I think the Lord just used that to sort of just pick away at everything that I thought that our family was ever going to be. And so we decided, pretty quickly. I think Evan was around 1 year old when we signed our adoption papers. And
yeah, he was super little. I don't think he remembers any time when Emily wasn't part of our conversations, at least.
Yeah.
So where did that story that's your experience before adoption. Where does Emily come into the picture?
Right. Yeah. So we decided to pursue adoption and researched a bunch of different adoption agencies and settled on one. I think too, a lot of people ask us why we chose international adoption versus domestic adoption. And I think it's completely a personal decision. There's need in both areas. And so I think, but God was definitely sort of nudging us towards international adoption. And I think when you kind of get started, you think that all the countries are available to you, and it's really not like that. They all have different rules and different guidelines, and so we ended up pursuing adoption through a company through this tiny country called Bulgaria that we had to look up on the map where it was. So, but it's right between Turkey and Greece, and then entered into this really long process to adopt her. It's just a real crazy experience. Because the way that they did it in Bulgaria is that kids had to be turned down by 2 families in country before they were even put on the international adoption list.
Sure.
And so even though she had, some medical challenges, she had to wait for a really long time. She was about 2.5 when we got her, which was about the youngest child that we would have been able to adopt. Sure. So. But it's just the story. I mean, it's clearly was like life transforming for her, but I think for us, the process of adopting was wild. It was very wild.
Yeah. A lot of, is this really happening kind of moments. And some of those were here on the state side where I don't remember all the details. Again, it was 10 years ago, but why did we have to drive to Fargo to be fingerprinted? Like, is there nowhere in Bismarck that can fingerprint us, And how many times can they take our fingerprints? They had these like digital ones. And I remember like my challenge was, could I get my fingerprint to roll on the first try?
Yeah, we would have like contests of who got better grades on the fingerprinting.
Yeah.
And it can seem overwhelming, but all those steps in the process are all steps that you go through because it protects the children that you're adopting. So it's a little bit like, it costs so much money, it's so much time, but also that it's for the benefit of the kids. So
yeah, and speaking of the cost, it was expensive, but we had our church family back at Charity in those days rallied around it, and they raised a lot of money that helped with that. And that was another one of those bizarre things where we knew there were all these bills coming and all these things that we'd have to pay for and travel and stuff. And the money was always there. And sometimes it was donations. Sometimes it was like, we just got a huge tax return and we need to book flights to Bulgaria. It was kind of a bizarre, for me anyway, going through this process, as strange as it was, over and over and over, I felt like we saw the providence of God just setting up, this is what you'll need, and then it was there. I think that was interesting.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a weird process, and even when we got to Bulgaria, it was strange. Bulgaria is a lot like North Dakota, except there's a mountain range right in the middle.
Sure.
But, I mean, it's a lot of farmland and small towns, and so we drove across Bulgaria the first time we were there, which was strange just because it felt like driving like from Bismarck to Fargo at one point. It was like, this feels normal, but it wasn't. And I remember the stories that jump out to me, I think it was the first trip, they had to get a picture for Emily's visa or passport or something. And so, here you go to the post office or something, and it was similar there, but we didn't realize it was like the first time Emily had left the orphanage in her life.
Sure.
And they loaded us into this little car and drove us across town, and then her worker, like, we have this on YouTube because you can't see it, like, had to hold her up almost like the Lion King, like this baby in front of the camera. And we're like standing there and people are yelling things in Bulgarian to get her to look at the camera. And we're kind of laughing and kind of crying because there's this poor little girl being held up in front of the thing. And it was just like...
And she's crying and they're screaming, like yelling in Bulgarian.
Yeah.
Like...
And we don't know what they're yelling. We don't know if we're in trouble. We don't know if she's in trouble. And it's like, this is just like... It was just a surreal experience.
Yeah, it was full of moments where we were thinking, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Like, how did this happen?
How did this happen?
Because she wasn't from Sofia, was she?
She was living in Sofia.
Okay.
Which is a beautiful town.
Well, she's from Burgess.
Oh, that's right. No,
Yep.
we flew into Sofia.
Yep,
That's
yep,
what it
yep,
was.
yep.
Gotcha.
And she was born and spent, the first 2.5 years of her life in Burgess, which is
I was going to say, how big is Burgess?
it's not huge, but it's kind of a resort town.
Sure.
It's right on the Black Sea, and there's a big cruise ship dock there.
Sure.
And so we kind of laughed because when the first you have to visit twice. You go once to meet her, and you spend about 5 days in country, and then you come home for about 6 months, and then you go back for another 5 days in country to actually pick her up. And so on our first trip, it was this weird combination of like we would go to our hotel, which ironically, another weird thing, it was called the Luxor. And for our honeymoon, we stayed at the Luxor in Las Vegas. That was where we went. So it was like the first hotel we ever stayed in together was the Luxor. And then here we are in Bulgaria at the Luxor. And so like in the morning.
It was very different though.
It was very different. It was not the same. But in the mornings, we'd like go for like walks along this beautiful scenic beach and eat in these cafes. And then at 1 o'clock, we'd have to go to the orphanage, and they'd put us in this tiny little room, which, again, if you're watching on YouTube, about the size of this room,
Sure.
filled with toys, like floor to ceiling, because all it was for parents who were coming to meet kids, and they would drop off this little Bulgarian who didn't speak English or know who we were and say, okay, we'll be back in an hour. And then we would sit there and try to interact with her, and it was awkward and weird and scary for her, I'm sure, and scary for us. And then we'd go to another cafe for dinner, and we'd walk through these shops, and it was like, where are we?
I think even that was like such a funny thing for me because I love to travel. Like anybody knows me knows I love to travel. So I think we were maybe around year 6 of our marriage, and I was already like, what are we going to do for our 10-year anniversary? Like I want to do something so great that it takes us 4 years to save for it and plan for it. And God had a very different idea of what our 10th year anniversary would look like.
You got the trip.
But he told, like, seriously, like, he, like, cares about the big things and the little things. Like, we ended up in this, like, beautiful resort town twice that year.
Yeah.
The first time was a lot less stressful for us.
Yeah, because the second time had a souvenir that we had to bring home.
Right. Yeah. We didn't have a terrified toddler with us.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, we just had all this time to, we went to a beach
And
for our
even-
10-year anniversary.
Yep. And even on the second trip, when we actually picked her up, there was a lot of terror because she was sick and she couldn't eat and she couldn't talk. And I mean, there's all kinds of issues. But we also spent like hours just wandering around the city with her in a stroller, like taking in the sights. Mm-hmm. And we spent more time in Sofia on that trip than Burgess. We flew to Burgess, picked her up, and the next day we flew back to Sofia. And then we had about 3 days of sitting around waiting for paperwork to get done and stuff like that. But so, yeah, it was a totally bizarre, like, you would go from sheer terror, like, oh my gosh, is this child going to survive? To like, oh, look at this beautiful cathedral and, taking pictures in front of stained glass windows. And
I remember on our last day, we had a certain number of things we had to get through. Mm-hmm. And it had to be like clockwork or we were not going to finish our list of things. It was like, pick up her passport, get it, her TB test read, like all this list of things. And we were not going to make it to pick up her passport.
Well, it was we had to get something from the police department. That was what we were waiting for all day long. And like every hour, our agency would call and say, we still haven't gotten it yet. We still haven't gotten it yet. It was to the point where, and then finally at 3:30 or something like that, and the embassy closed at 4, we got the paperwork, and the guy called and said, come down right now. And we grabbed her, and we went down to the street, and he, like, it felt like a Jason Bourne movie.
Yeah, it felt like we were in a movie.
We got in the back seat of this car, and he drove up on sidewalks. He was weaving in and out. I mean, he was getting us to this thing. And we had to run to a hospital, walk in, and someone had to sign some document. And then we had to fly to the U.S. Embassy, which, involves security and scanners, and it was a miracle. I mean, that's the only way to explain it. There was a miracle that we got all this stuff done. But the scariest ride of my life in this car. And then meanwhile, poor little Emily is like getting thrown around in the backseat of the car. I think that was the first time we heard her laugh. Like, wee. Like,
well, yeah, it was bizarre because, no seatbelts. There's no seatbelts. And so when we would take a corner, I felt like, I don't know, like our legs would like fly. I mean, it just was like we were up on two wheels. Like,
There was a moment where I'm
Emily
like,
was,
we are
like,
playing
calm.
chicken with a bus right now.
Yeah, Emily was calm as can be.
I wish I don't remember the guy's name. He was a good guy, but
Yeah.
you know, and his whole career is helping parents get kids adopted. So he's a good guy, but man, he did not drive like a good guy.
He did not want us to stay there one extra day, and thank goodness.
Oh, and we didn't
Thank
want to
goodness.
stay either. It was we owe him big time, but yeah, it was a bizarre experience. And then, you know, flying internationally with a toddler is hard, and then add to it that she doesn't know who you are. You know?
Well, and you've mentioned the fact that you didn't know if she would survive the trip.
Yeah, when I'm trying to think of all the medical issues she had when we first got her, but she couldn't eat solid foods. At 2.5 years old, she weighed 17 pounds.
17 pounds. We brought her home in 9-month clothing.
Yeah.
And she couldn't hear, right?
Yeah, which we didn't know, but she needed tubes so badly. The doctor, you know, we got home and we had all kinds of medical appointments and things, but the doctor said basically like it's like she's been underwater her whole life, you know. And if you think about what you can hear underwater, I always say you can hear pitch and rhythm, but you can't hear any articulation. And so then my joke is music's her native language, which again was kind of a miraculous thing. You know, this girl only hears pitch and rhythm. She could sing long before she could talk. And
still now it's her musical ability is like savant level.
Yeah,
I was listening to her play drums the other day just for fun, and like I'm like, Emily can do that?
Yeah, and you know, of course, God drops her into this family that is wired for music. And again, early on, the only thing she would get excited about was marching bands. I mean, how many marching band videos did we watch? And it just so happened her grandpa had a marching band, you know, and would let her drum major in the little parades or at rehearsals, and it's just been it's been a wild roller coaster, full of ups and downs. But I would say the consistent thing was God just keeps dropping these little nuggets of like, yep, this is the plan. Yep, I'm still here. Because you know, it's fun to sit here and talk about adoption and show people pictures of adoption, and it's easy to have your heart broken for these poor little children, and I just want to go and help them. But it is not an easy process. It's not for the faint of heart. And outside of the grace of God, I can't imagine doing it. I know people do it without
Right.
a faith part of it, but man, that's hard for me to imagine.
So go ahead.
Oh, I'm so grateful for that, because I think there are just, you know, a few times in my life when I feel like God was like so tangible to me that I could like reach out and touch him. Like it was like, and that was just one of those things. And I think if we would have said no, like when he was nudging us to that call, if we would have said no, we would have never experienced that. And then I remember when we were trying to make the decision, one of the completely ridiculous things that I had conjured up in my head of why we should say no was because of the boys. Like, what does this do for the boys? What are we bringing into our home? We are never going to get to take them to Disney World. Like, I legit thought that. Like, we're going to be so poor, we won't be able to take them to Disney World. Like, we're not going to be able to do what we want to do and have the freedoms. And I think about what this has done to them. I mean, and the kind of, I see them in the way that they treat kids with disabilities, and I think that's born out of their love for their sister.
Sure.
Some days more than
And
others.
sometimes the lack of love for their sister, you know.
Let's
but
be
yeah,
real.
no.
They're siblings through and through.
Well,
Go ahead.
That is true. You know, you talk about siblings and how they get along. I think if you know, Emily looks a little different than the Peske boys, you know, but they act just like brothers and sisters. They will rag on each other and pick on each other. And
Even though we always say that the one that looks the most like me is Emily.
yeah,
There's some truth to that.
I don't know.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, you talked about your experience with the adoption process, and I kind of wanted to take it two directions. The shorter one is, what do you guys think would have been Emily's life had you not adopted her? Had you rejected that call?
I joke all the time and say she would have been fine because she is good at getting what she wants. You know, you see her around the church, she's always got 2 cookies in her hand because 2 people wanted to give it to her. But realistically, I mean, I don't know. She was young, and so she would have been in the system for a long time. Part of the reason I think we got her so young, because 2.5 is actually pretty young for Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Usually it's more like 4 or 5 years old. It's kind of the average age. I think they adopted her out so early because they couldn't keep her alive. and they saw her weight and they saw her medical issues and thought, this girl's going to die. And I don't know if it was out of love that they got her adopted because they knew if she had parents, there'd be someone to get her the medical care she needed, or if it was like, there's more paperwork for a funeral than there is for an adoption, so let's move this along. So I think had she survived, it would have been bleak. I think it would have been living on the streets eventually. And
yeah, a lot of countries, when kids hit a certain age, and it's not like 18, sometimes it's 16 or younger, they will send them out with the clothes on their back and give them a few dollars, and that's it. And
Sure.
and that's how they end up being trafficked, or
yeah, that's a real possibility for her.
with addiction, or they end up dying. So you like to think, hopefully somebody else would have come along, but also if everybody just waits for somebody else to come along, and then
No one comes along.
right,
Yeah,
right.
sure.
The second half of my thought was, what has it been like as parents of an adopted kid? You talked about, you already had the two boys. You've talked a little bit about how they've accepted her, and she quite literally is the third kid of the family without really any exceptions to that. How do you guys feel as adopted parents? What's that experience like once you get back to the States, or for someone who doesn't go international? What's your experience with that like, raising a kid that's not biologically your
Right.
own?
Yeah, it's hard.
Nose goes.
It's the like Rob said, it's hard. It's the hardest thing that we've ever done. It's probably, quite honestly, the toughest part about our marriage. But we've said from the very beginning, we went into it with our eyes wide open, because I think there is a lot of danger to be had when you don't do that. Because they say even kids that are adopted domestically who are adopted right out of the hospital, that they actually still come with trauma. And so you have to be prepared for what your life will look like in the future. But we've said from the very, very beginning that God didn't tell us that it was going to be easy, but he did say it was going to be worth it.
And that he'd be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a comfort to me. It's hard for me to know what the hard part about it is, because Emily has some special needs, and I'm not going to go deep into those. But you think about, like, if your own children were born with a disability, you just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You find the doctors, you find the therapies, you do what you have to do. And there are people all over this world and in our own community that you figure it out. And I feel like with Emily, there wasn't like oh shoot, we got to figure this out for this adopted kid. It was just like, well, she's ours, we got to figure this out. And I don't think she remembers pre-adoption. I don't think she remembers the orphanage. I don't think she she doesn't remember a world without us and her brothers and stuff like that. But she asks questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes her questions make people uncomfortable, and I can't say they make us uncomfortable, because we've always told her the truth. It's not like we pretended she was not adopted or something like that. But I think it's just it's traumatic. I think there was trauma, and you never know how the trauma is going to last. And to be honest, I think we are victims of trauma. It was traumatic for us too. But I don't say that to make people feel sorry for us or anything like that. But you work it out. I think every family has its challenges. Our first son, love him, but didn't sleep through the night for 2.5 years. That was traumatic for me. I'm a sleeper. Our second son
Still holds it over his head.
I still do. Yeah. He's in college now, and our second son was born with a cleft lip. And not that was a huge deal, but it was scary and different and new, and you just figure it out, And so Emily was born in a foreign country with a handful of other challenges, and you figure it out, because what else can you do?
I think I'm so happy for her that she is here in the time that she, it's just, I feel like she is doing as well as she's doing because of how people and services and therapists and have wrapped their arms around our family. That is why she is going to be able to live up to her full potential. And I think that's something that's very special about growing up, especially being adopted into a family that's part of a church community, because we would not have ever been able to do what we did without the help of a lot of people.
Sure.
And I think that's, God calls us to care for widows and orphans, but we know that not everybody is called to adopt, but everybody can do something. And maybe it looks different for everybody. It might be adopting, it might be foster care. There's a huge need for foster care in our community. It might be sharing a post about adoption, or donating, sponsoring a child would qualify. And certainly everybody can pray about and for families that are going through adoption and foster care. So everybody can do something.
Sure. Yeah. And as much of an impact as we have had on her, she has had a huge impact on us and our kids. And I often marvel even at just like our parents, our family, my brother and his wife and Piper, and how I don't think any of them look at her any different. It's just like, there's another grandkid, Piper and Emily are cousins.
Oh, I see it with your dad especially. I mean, how often does your dad take Emily and just do things with her?
Yeah, he's like her favorite person on earth.
I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's cool because that's God putting a child in a family, and it's not the traditional way that you see it, but it's still God puts you in your family on purpose. And I say that often I say it to mothers of very young children who are exhausted and tired and worried about diaper rashes and what their kids are up to, and say, God gave you that child on purpose. He knew that you were the one for them. And I would say the exact same thing to an adoptive parent, even though there's an extra 400 or so steps in between, but that God forms families in all kinds of different ways. And I get a kick out of Emily, because we joke with her about, it talks about in Scripture how God hears the prayers of widows and orphans. Like there is a thread in the Bible that says these people are special to him. And so I joke with Emily about using her orphan powers, like she loves parades. We talked about marching bands. And she's like, what if it rains? Well, Emily, you need to use your orphan powers and ask God. It says he hears the prayers of orphans and widows. And so I'm trying to teach her she has superpowers. And then once she has them, then I'm like, hey, could you use your orphan powers? Because I need, and that's kind of our joke. And that's probably not a good thing for a pastor to say in something that we're broadcasting. But, I mean, it's family life. How many of us make up stupid games we play with our kids that no one will understand except you and your kids? And, I had those games with Evan and Ben, and I have other games that I play with Emily, and it's all of it. That's all I can say is about adoption. It's everything that you think it is and more and less.
Sure.
But yeah, it is something. And, part of why we're here today is to increase awareness, because I think every time we tell this story or we talk about it, someone comes up to us and says, man, I've always thought about adopting or fostering, or can you tell me more? And then we visit, and that's fun. And by the way, if anyone ever wants to have dinner covered, you just say those words to my wife, and you will guaranteed have an invitation over for dinner. We will cook for you.
We love that.
We love that. We love sitting down. We've done this many, many times. And but immediately after the questions, what starts to come up are the fears. And we've said some of our fears. There are other fears out there, and we totally understand that. And I'm here today doing this because whatever your fears are, you need to know you don't do this alone. And sometimes it's direct divine intervention. We have seen that in our process with Emily, where there is no explanation other than God reached down from heaven and did something to make it happen. But then it goes also to the people in the church that have gathered around her and us, and their prayers and their time and their love. I remember going to a doctor's appointment. We had to have all these doctor's appointments for us to prove we were healthy enough to adopt a child that Bulgaria needed. And a doctor just saying, well, how many of these forms do you have? And I said, well, we got to fill one out for each kid. And he just took the forms and filled them out. I said, oh, do we need to sign up for an appointment? He's like, no, you're doing a good thing. We're going to take care of you. And I mean, little things that someone did in 30 seconds of their life that changed the entire world for our family and for this little girl.
Right. We have a million examples like that. Like, I remember we got word at the very last minute that like all the paperwork and everything was done for us, and the court process was done for us to go get her. And we had to fly out like a week later, and the plane tickets were over $10,000.
Wow.
And we did not have that money. And so somebody just did like a little fundraiser for us, and we got thousands of dollars from a random doctor in Ohio. And we have no idea how he found out about us. No idea. We'd never, my brother lives in Ohio, so maybe it was somehow connected to something he had said to somebody, but it just takes a lot of people listening to what God's telling them to do to make stuff like that happen.
Sure. But it will happen. Mm-hmm. And, we talked this Sunday. I know we're recording this ahead of time, but just last Sunday I preached on fear and how when we live in fear, we tend to tell our kids, go be safe, be safe, be safe. And God hasn't called us to be safe. He's called us to be good. And I can tell you adoption is good. And I just want to stress, if there's anyone out there listening who's thought about it, or they feel that little tickle in their brain where it's like, oh man, I don't know, maybe I should look at this, maybe I should think about this, come find me, come find my wife. We have, I don't know how many other adoptive families in this church. We have a handful. We have people in this church who were adopted, and now they maybe haven't adopted, but they can tell that story from that side. And wherever you are in that story, if you were adopted, if you're thinking about adoption, there is someone here who would love to come alongside you and support you and pray for you. And there are financial resources. I think we still have a donation at this church for people doing adoption, and it's not real specific. It's like, we're going to help pay for this because we think it's important. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I want to call out fear in this moment and just say that if you have fears, we get it. We still have those fears. We still are worried about Emily and what her future holds and what our family is going to look like. But God's been with us in this process for a solid 10 years now, and I have every reason to believe he'll still be there tomorrow. So that's what I feel like I want to say about this today.
Very cool. So. Nicole, any closing thoughts that he hasn't touched on?
Just to circle back, like I often do, to the very beginning, right at the close.
Okay, we're starting over. Time's up, Nicole. Wrap it up.
No, I just want to go back to that call again, like that little like nudge that I felt, because I think it's also important to talk about how, that I had this calling and this nudge to do it, but Rob didn't necessarily have that right away. And one of my favorite parts about our whole entire story is just that he felt like, even though it was my calling, that he couldn't find a good reason to say no and not support me in my calling. And that it's okay that if there's something that you're being called to do and only one of you is dealing with it, and it's a good thing to support them in that. And sometimes you find your own calling along the way. Yeah.
I used to say all the time, Nicole felt called to this, and I didn't, but I know for sure I am called to support my wife. And so, and that's a pretty common story we hear. There's a lot of women out there that are feeling that nudge or that leaning, and their husbands are like, nah, I'm not interested. And I get that. But I want to challenge the husbands out there. If your wife comes to you with this and says, man, what do you think about this? You owe it to her to investigate, to hear it out, to take a look and see. And the answer may be no. Like that's possible. Yeah. I know good people that were thinking about it and pursued it, and for whatever reason or whatever sign or whatever it was, that wasn't where they ended up landing. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. There's no problem with that. But you can't resist that. And God will find a way,
Sure.
I mean, I think about even with Emily, one of the things we said early on, they have these waiting child lists, children that are available right now, and we're looking through these pictures and stories, and you're like, how do you pick out a child? Like, it felt wrong. And so pretty early on, I think we decided, like, we are going to take the child that gets assigned to us, because we didn't want control of that. And And so I think like God really used that, because I don't know if we would have picked Emily, and I'm not saying we don't like her, but I'm just saying you can trust God in this process.
Sure.
Right.
To send you who you ought to have, or to not send you who you ought not to have. So
I mentioned at the start of the podcast, if you guys have questions or comments about today's podcast, you can reach out to Amy at inspirefamily.org. But if you're interested in adoption, whether it be sharing your story about adoption, interested in going through this process, please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. I work here, so you can share. I'm rob.peske at inspirefamily.org. You can find me on our website, on the app, in this building most days of the week, Sunday mornings. My wife is around almost every Sunday. Usually she's running a camera or a sound thing, but she's the curly-haired one. You can just tackle her in the hallway somewhere. You'll find her around.
I like that plan.
Or you'll see her being tackled by a little Bulgarian girl who's probably wants to leave because we're talking too much.
Mom.
Stop it! Yeah, so anyway.
Would you, Rob, just on behalf of orphans and families who have gone through adoption and are planning on going through adoption, would you close us in prayer today?
I will close us in prayer. Absolutely. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this day and for your blessings. And Lord, I just want to pause for a moment, and I want to lift up all of the children in the world that are seeking a family. And you have chosen them, and you have plans for them, that you will not leave them or forsake them, and that you are for them. And Lord, I pray that as a church, both as Inspire Family Fellowship and as the church worldwide, that we will hear your call and open our arms and open our homes and open our families to receive these ones that you love so much. Lord, I pray if we have a listener out there who has been wrestling with this or toying with it or thinking about it, I just challenge them to make that next step, Lord. And I pray that you are with them, that you are walking with them, that you'll give them wisdom and guidance and patience as they explore this out and that they seek your will. Lord, I pray for our listeners. I pray that you bless them and keep them safe, healthy, and happy, and that you'll guide them and teach them and bring them into your grace and your mercy for all time. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, you're more than welcome to join us in person at Inspire any Sunday or Wednesday that you're able. 523 North 21st Street, Bismarck, North Dakota. Sunday, 9:15, 10:45, and Wednesday nights services are at 7. Otherwise, feel free to reach out. Like I said, Amy at inspirefamily.org, rob.peske at inspirefamily.org. If you want to talk to me for whatever reason, Ty at inspirefamily.org. Otherwise, have a blessed rest of your November, and we'll see you next Thursday.